I'm back home. That's filming, and I'm in the discography review. Well, I guess I'll go put this where it has to go. Hi, guys. What's going on, world of YouTube? I was just using the door-for-door to go to some nude beaches and stuff. And if you're new to my channel, none of that made sense, and you just saw a shirtless guy disappear in a chair and just put a fedora up. Hello, world of YouTube. Welcome to my Deftones Discography review. 1 second. Welcome to my Deftones Discography review. This is part 1, the 90s. In this part, I'm going to be covering their demo album, Like Linus, and their albums Adrenaline and Around the Fur. If you'd like to skip ahead to part 2, the 2000s, where I discuss the albums White Pony, their self-titled album, their album Saturday Night Wrist, the B-Sides and Rarities album, along with their album Diamond Dyes, click the door-for-door, the thing I came in on. It's a magical fedora, takes you to magical places. It's awesome. Click it, it'll take you to part 2. And if you never listened to Deftones, they're a metal band who I'm not gonna give them the term, the label nu metal, because they have elements of that in their music, but I don't really consider them to be like a nu metal band, because their vocalist Chino Moreno doesn't really fit the bill of a nu metal vocalist. I think that he's got a fantastic upper register, and normally you don't get that in nu metal. And the band itself is full of instrumentalists who bring interesting elements into the genre that would make it unique, but I feel that's only part of their sound. I only have 3 things to cover in this part of the review, so might as well go ahead and get this shit started. Now, the first thing they released was a demo album called Like Linus, which was released back in 1993, and this demo album is weird. A majority of these tracks, as far as I know, haven't been released again, aside from Teething, which was put on the Crow 2 soundtrack, and the song is Engine Number 9, Root, and 7 Words, and they have another version of Engine Number 9 on here as well, which were all put on, except for like one version of Engine Number 9, were all put on Adrenaline, their next album, or their first major album, and this album is weird. Like, some of the tracks instrumentally sound like they're Adrenaline style, but Chino doesn't sound like himself. He sounds like a poor man's Maynard James Keenan. Like, he didn't really find, I guess, his personality on the mic, which is just weird for me to hear, because, like, I only heard this recently, because when I was looking up, like, way back when I decided to do a Deftones review, I looked up this album, and, actually, the Deftones Vault, who's one of you guys, has all of it on his channel, and I'm actually going to make a playlist, which I'll link in the end of thingy, to all the tracks, all of them from his channel. All the songs I'm going to use are going to be from his channel, so there you go. Supporting the world of YouTube, one user at a time. But this demo album is just odd, mostly in terms of its vocals, and there's a track on here, I think it's Christmas, that's a reggae track, like a reggae kind of sounding track, and it's weird. It's a weird demo album. Aside from that, instrumentally, it sounds like what you'd expect. Like Linus, I'd actually like to hear it redone the Deftones style, like the fully Deftones, Chino doing himself, vocally, all that kind of stuff. I'm not big on it. It's just, it's odd. But again, you can be the judge for yourself. I'll leave a link below. My favorite track, probably Like Linus version 2. Because I like the way that sounds. I mean, really, this aside from the instrumentation or aside from the vocals and the weird reggae track, this is all Deftones fare, instrumentally, early Deftones fare, and it sounds like a demo album. It's very raw, it's very, it's not mastered or mixed very well, and, everything else is Deftones. It's just that the small aspects make it weird enough to where I'm not that big on it. Plus, I like the early Deftones sound, but not nearly as much as I like the later Deftones sound, so it's alright. But like I said, favorite song, Like Linus version 2. Full album, playlist below. Let's talk about the first album, shall we? Now, the first time they released was called Adrenaline, which was released back in 1995, and this album is, it's at least in terms of typical first album fare, it's fairly typical. It's their rawest sound, it's their least produced sound. Chino's almost his most, not his most intense, but like it's their most streamlined nu metal sound from this album. Like Minus Blindfold, he's almost half rapping in the verse, and I feel they were kind of tied to that Like Linus sound in terms of that, because their next album they kind of pushed their sound out a bit more, and this album is still pretty good. It's not my favorite album. It's not my least favorite, but it's kind of down there. It has some really solid tracks on it, like I love Root. Bored is a fantastic opening track, and the drum lines on this album are pretty stellar. The drummer is so great at fills, and I love his use of ghost notes. He's really, it's kind of nice to hear such depth and intricacy in drums from this genre. I love this album for the fact that kind of, you know where they got their roots from, but they also really wanted to do something different. Because this album, if you want to compare it to other nu metal albums, it's kind of its own beast. Like if you want to compare it to a Korn album or a Limp Bizkit album, you can tell that they're tied to that genre, but they're still fairly different. To where you're like, wow, Deftones is pretty interesting. They're going to be an interesting band. This album is just, it's a great starting point for the band. I wouldn't recommend starting with this album, but it's a great starting point for this band. It sets some really good groundwork that they're gonna root to both in the next album and later on in their career. My favorite track on the album is Minus Blindfold, even though it's the one track where he's kind of pseudo-rapping. I like the way he does it, and I love that not the opening riff, but the pre-verse riff, the dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. I love that riff. It sounds really cool. And I love Stephen Carpenter's drum work, or guitar work, because he has kind of this unique sound, this unique tone that I just love to hear. Like when I hear him, I'm like, oh, that's Stephen Carpenter, and it's nice to have that kind of individuality within this band. I like it a lot. Yeah, favorite song, Minus Blindfold, linked below, along with all my other favorite songs. But yeah, let's move on to a more bigger album, shall we? And the next time they released, and the last one I'm going to talk about in this part, it was called Around the Fur, which was released back in 1997. And this, in terms of a band's second album, is a typical second album. It takes the band's original sound, makes it bigger, and makes it more crisp and better produced. You can still see the roots indefinitely to Adrenaline. He's improved on his vocals a bit more, gotten even more character behind them, and the band still plays fantastically. This again is not one of my favorite albums. I like it a little bit more than Adrenaline, but still not as much as some of the other albums I'm going to discuss in this review, which some of it might surprise you. But this album features some fantastic guitar lines, some not like intricate, but like some really good riffs, like on My Own Summer and this track, Be Quiet and Drive Far Away. There's some great soaring vocal parts like on this and on Around the Fur. There's some really quiet moments like on Mascara that are really nice to hear. There's a good variety on this album that expanded the sound of Adrenaline even more. Really, one of the reasons why I don't like this album that much is that while it expands the band's sound, it doesn't do it as much as they are known to do or that they've done in later albums. I do like this album, and I do love the crunch behind the sound, and I love the bounce that this album brings, and I love the whole vibe of the album. But one thing I love about Deftones that you'll see later on in part 2 is their ability to bring this sound and reinterpret it and make it even more interesting. I love Chino's screams on this album, like on the chorus of My Own Summer, and I love the way that this album kind of brings them into a bigger realm. But aside from that, I mean, this album is typical second album fodder. I dig it. Again, not one of my favorites. My favorite track, though, probably Head Up, maybe Lotion. I love the riff in Head Up. I love, like, that's like great nu metal. That riff is just fantastic, and his vocals sound kind of rooted to Jonathan Davis, which if you know me, you know I'm a huge Korn fan. But either Head Up or Lotion. I might have both linked in the under thingy. That's pretty much it for part 1. Not much to talk about. I mean, this sound of Deftones is a lot of the same. They've just gotten better as they go along, at least in terms of finding their own character, while also staying true to their original roots. I love this band, and that'll come more, so you'll see that more on the later album reviews. This is kind of a great introduction to the band's rooted sound. Again, I would not start with Around the Fur. I'd actually start with White Pony, but I'll talk about that in the next part. But again, if you'd like to skip ahead, or if you'd like to go to part 2, Door Fedora, that's pretty much it for my Deftones part 1 review. Not much really else to discuss. You guys have good days, lives, and situations, and if you do not click the link to part 2, I'll see you another day. But if you do click the link to part 2, I'll see you in the 2000s with the Deftones.